Okay, so I'm just gonna start off. So thanks a lot, Uwe, for that really interesting presentation. I think what we're gonna find is that our presentations are quite different. So I think Uwe has quite like a really great kind of macro view of how inclusion should be measured. Whereas what I'm gonna share is more of a micro, I suppose, a more micro perspective of what we have been doing for inclusion at NUS. So just to start off, so I'm Charlton from the Global Relations Office, like Rekha introduced. So I help with the University Southeast Asia Relations and Development on Short-Term Programs. So just huge thank you to ASEF and especially Noprendu for inviting me to speak to you guys today. It's really a pleasure to be here. So I've just got a couple slides. What I'm going to cover today is, I guess, inclusion in terms of mobility. I understand that there's really many factors to inclusion, and I'm not going to be able to cover them all. So like I said, this sharing is going to focus on our experience with how we view inclusion and how we are instilling it into our mobility programs. And I hope that this will be helpful for you. And definitely, please just feel free to ask me anything during Q&A, and I hope I'll be able to help you out there. So today I'll be taking you through basically three broad areas. The first will be the kind of multiple global pathways that we've laid out for our students to ensure that we have a huge variety of programs that cater to different interests and faculties, as well as our program design. I'm going to share with you a recent model that we are embarking in that we hope will be able to help as many students as possible travel in a way that isn't disruptive to their semester and hopefully won't be too big of a financial burden. And this model is actually quite important to us because it's also going to help us push students to destinations that are frequently less traveled. So hopefully to include greater exposure in their international journeys. The last one I'm going to talk about is virtual programs. So this is something that, I think all of us have had to explore because of the pandemic. And I think we've discovered that it's a way to help, include students who are not able to travel for whatever kinds of reasons. And I'll just be sharing a few takeaways that we've gotten from organizing these programs. So maybe just to share some context of what we're doing, we are taking quite a numbers-based approach on this. So these are our mobility targets. So NUS's target is to have 100% of all our students take part in at least one overseas experience, because we believe in the value that it has in terms of developing your character, global mindset, and broadening your horizons. The second one that you see is what we call the 70-70 target. So the Ministry of Education here has actually issued a target for 70% of university students to participate in an overseas program, and 70% of this 70% are supposed to go to ASEAN member states, to China or India. And so together, two of these targets form a huge driving force behind our mobility efforts. So moving on, this is just some of the global pathways that we have that we hope include as many of our students as possible. It's meant to cater to as many interests and attract as many students as possible to apply for these programs. So the first one we've got is the student exchange program. I guess everyone is more or less quite familiar with this. I guess here we are quite liberal with our own faculties. We encourage them to sign their own agreements with partners, especially for faculties that tend to be a bit more specialized, like medicine, law, or architecture, who may find that they need more specialized partners overseas. They are free to sign these agreements on their own. We also try to cater to different interests. So for example, for students who are more interested in entrepreneurship, we have the NUS Overseas Colleges, where students get a chance to work and study abroad, where they can intern at startups in entrepreneurial hotspots around the world, like Israel, Silicon Valley, Shanghai, Jakarta, etc. And we've also got international research programs for students that are more inclined in that direction. We've also got our Center for Future Ready Graduates, which helps to source internships for students that they can do overseas or locally as well. And we have our summer programs, which I think is our biggest vehicle towards including as many students in the in having a chance to go overseas as possible, because this is really where we take advantage of the common holiday period to get as many of them out. We don't there's no requirement based on faculty or grades or anything. As long as the students can fit these programs into their schedule, they are free to go. And we also have financial aid, where we try to help our our more financially needy students to go overseas. There's a mix of scholarships and bursaries, which are scholarships, I guess, are measured based on merit, your grades or essays that you write and so on. Bursaries are more of things where we look into your family income and we determine, how much support we can help you out with. So what we really try to ensure is that, whatever our students' interests or financial status, we hope that there's a program that they can embark on. So next, I'm going to share about a recent program that we've designed to include overseas experiences into the student semester. So I think what we found is that our students are really, really practical people, and going overseas for things that that don't have credits, or that don't have a huge perceivable benefit immediately is a bit of a hard sell sometimes. So what we've come up with is called the Global Classroom module, when we are encouraging faculty to include overseas experiential learning components into existing modules. So what we do stipulate is that this component has to be related to your module learning outcomes. So I'll give you an example. The picture that you see here is actually from our Thai language module, where one of our lecturers brought students over to Thailand for a week, just for some real hard immersion where they speak Thai all the time, 24/7, and they come back after that and continue the module. I think this program was actually taking off pretty well, and then the pandemic hit. So this was actually, I think, the only trip that managed to go out in 2020. There was another trip. Just to give you another example of a related overseas experience. We had the professor of architecture try to bring students over to Borobudur to study temple architecture, but that couldn't go ahead. So another thing that we do in this model is to provide financial support. So we provide funding of up to 70% of costs, or $1,000, depending on which one of these is hit first, for students. Just to defray the financial costs of them going on these modules. Top-ups are also available based on your family income. And we also encourage our faculty to place this overseas component during the holiday period, such as during their recess week, and to travel to nearby ASEAN countries. So this will really minimize the disruption to student schedule and to bring costs down to include more participants. I guess this is the last but biggest area of my presentation that I want to go into. It's about virtual programs. So like I mentioned, this, we pretty much started these all because of the pandemic. And just want to share, I guess, what our philosophy is towards virtual programs. So we don't actually believe in using them to replace physical programs, because we don't think they can replicate the same effects. What we do think is that they allow us to use technology to our advantage, to enhance levels of global exposure and learning during the pandemic. Related to the above point, we believe that these virtual programs can help to keep the spirit of exploration alive within our students, so that they can continue participating in physical programs when restrictions ease. But of course, I think virtual programs, if we can all agree, they do seem like a good tool to include students who are unable to travel, either because of financial or other reasons. And what I'd like to do next is to share some examples of these virtual programs that we've done and some of our takeaways. So our very first virtual program that we did was with Mahidol University, actually. So it was a really exciting time because we didn't know what it was going to be like. But we were very grateful to Naprenu and her colleagues in the International Relations Division. Thanks to them, it went really smoothly, and it was a great experience for our participants. So some of our program highlights, here I'll be showing you some how including how inclusion plays into this as well. So in our initial discussions about this program, it was mentioned that I think dance classes traditional Thai dancing classes wanted to be included in the curriculum, and it was quite a puzzling thing how that's going to be done, because without the costume, I think the dance is it's not so much of an experience, I think, without the costume. But of course, we were very thankful to Mahidol University for mailing the costumes directly to our students. And what we felt was that the inclusion of this physical element really helped to simulate the element of immersion and cultural experience at home for our students. What I really want to share though is our key finding from this program, and it's related to two of the student-led sections of the program, wherein our Mahidol students taught NUS students how to wear the Thai costumes and how to dance on camera, and our students in turn taught them some national songs for a sing-along. So what we actually discovered was that these sessions were the ones where the students seemed to enjoy themselves the most and where there was the most interaction, because I guess it's quite impossible to do a dance lesson with your camera off. So you've got to have your camera on, you've got to see each other, you've got to talk to each other, which brings me to our main takeaway that we think that by including students in the organization of activities, by giving them the direct ownership over the program, helps to enhance the level of participation and fulfillment, and definitely facilitates relationship building that we saw amongst the participants. The next program I'll just go through super briefly. It's called eSteer. The entire name that you can see on the slide, I'm not going to read that out because it's a huge mouthful. So what it does is it focuses on exposing students to developing regions and places that are less traveled. And there's quite a few fixed components in it that they've got to interact with locals. They have to study about the economy and political situation of wherever it is that they're going. So what we felt was that, for our virtual programs, it was becoming a bit hard to get people to sign up, because I think a lot of students are feeling what we all call Zoom fatigue, in that they are just tired of being on camera, of being on Zoom. But what we did find was that one of the things that really still attracted them to sign up was having prominent speakers to come in. So for example, for this, we had the ambassador of Israel to Singapore and the chairman of Middle East Institute to come in and share some insights. And again, in this program, we saw an element of physical element, which helped to simulate immersion and really helped to increase the level of interaction that we saw with between the students. So we had Middle Eastern meals delivered straight to our students' houses, and we had a chef bring them through live what the significance of each dish was while they were eating it. And we also had a live tour of Middle Eastern souk or market, where we had, I think they literally had someone with a GoPro walk around the market and show our participants what was going on. The next program, this is the last program I'm going to share. So it's called the Young Asian Leaders Initiative. We just wrapped this up quite recently in mid-November. So we designed this to teach students about holistic resilience, to prepare for the future of work in Asia and to get to know ASEAN through their peers better. We had about 120 participants from Singapore and ASEAN. And what we did was we actually had a third-party vendor come in to organize this. So the facilitator, she used to be a speaker in Parliament, so she's a fantastic facilitator and really engaging speaker. So a couple of highlights that we had for this were, unique online tools that were used for interaction. What we see in this video is called the Miro board. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but as you can see from the video, you can watch everyone's inputs at the same time as you're putting your own in. So we felt that that was really great in terms of raising the level of interaction between our students. We also had open space technology and a student panel-led discussion. So open space tech basically is just a discussion method in which we allow students to form their own breakout rooms and to discuss any topic under the sun. So we had students talking about plants or religion or so on. And what I really wanted to highlight out of these key sections was really that, we took the lesson that we learned from our Mahidol collaboration about, student-led sections. And what we did was we asked them to organize a human library on their own. And, definitely to invite their own speakers, whoever they wanted really. And at first, they had some doubts, but really after some guidance, I think our students managed to pull together quite an incredibly diverse panel of 22 speakers for this human library. So we had a green financing consultant, we had a teacher, we had a nurse talk about what frontline COVID work is like. We had a transgender activist and a writer and many more interesting speakers. And what we found was that it was one of the most interactive sessions we had throughout the program. And it would have been impossible for one administrator like myself to do that on my own. But really including students in the process of organization turned this program into something else. And what we felt was that this was really empowering for the students to pull this off. And it also helped to ensure that they would be interested in the content that the speakers brought forth, because they were the ones that invited them. Yeah, and I think on a deeper level, this also helped to develop, their organizational skills as well. So definitely a lot of benefits that came from that. So these are our key design takeaways from our virtual program. So I think at the beginning of the pandemic, our initial notion was that, they could just be a series of lectures, but they can really be so much more than that. If you create them very purposefully, I think they can be great experiences. And what we found is that interactivity and physical elements can go a long way towards enriching the experience that you bring to your students. And yeah, got it. Just, 2 more slides, so almost there. So what we've also found is that, these high quality virtual experiences can help to augment internationalization, but probably not to replace physical programs. And what I felt was most interesting through my experience of organizing these things is that we think that including students in the design of select segments of the program actually raises their investment, participation, interaction, and on the deeper level helps them to develop themselves during the program. So this is my last slide. So just a very brief overview of how we are measuring impact for our program. So it's a mix of quantitative and qualitative methods. So in terms of numbers, when we want to track how we're doing on our targets or how many students, whether or not we've managed to include more students in our program, and I guess in further years than when we started. We have an online system called EduRec on which students have to apply for every single program. So we definitely know how many students we're getting out. We've also, I guess, done some other data-driven insights. So we have within my office, there sits a thought leadership team, and it's their job to sort of think about questions like this, like what is the impact of our overseas programs on our graduate career and employment outcomes? And what we've actually found is that, going abroad increases cultural competencies, but there was no direct relation to salary and employment status. In terms of qualitative data, we do make it a condition of participation or, attaining certification or any kind of financial support that students submit an experience report and feedback after the programs. And what we felt actually is that these are often the most indicative of the quality of our international programs and the benefits that our students have reaped from participation. What we're thinking is that, especially with the pandemic still raging, we did think that travel could resume quite soon, but with the new release that has just came out, there's an obvious limitation to the numbers that we can send out. So what we're thinking is that perhaps our focus on impact should not so much be on the numbers, but maybe on the quality of international exposure that we're providing. And with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.